Mike DeCourcy is the esteemed columnist for the Sporting News. You can catch him on Fox Sports during the college basketball season and the Big Ten Network, which he now owns, I'm hearing. He owns a huge majority stake in the network. And he's also on the take for the Indiana Hoosiers in both football and basketball with his ties to the Hoosier State, even though he's a Pittsburgher through and through, and also a huge Steeler fan like I am. Thank God for Mike DeCourcy. We've been blessed to have him on C2C every week for several years now. I think it's like 25 years straight he's been doing the show. Mike, Tony Bennett walked away from a fantastic coaching job and career at Virginia and Charlottesville. I mean, the guy did it all there. When he walked away, initially when we broke the story on here, we thought maybe he was sick or something. We didn't know why. But, hours later, we would find out basically it's because of what's happened to college athletics that's, made him walk away. Could you believe it?
I'm not surprised. There had been a lot of discussion about the possibility that he might go in this direction. The surprise, obviously, is that he declined to do it in the aftermath of the previous season, signed a contract extension in June, and then decides to do it on the very eve of the season. Gosh, he even attended ACC Media Day. Why would you go through that if you didn't want to coach? But he did. And my position on this is really simple, that the changes in college sports that he acknowledged drove him out into retirement from college coaching are okay. So they're problematic for him, and they certainly make it really difficult, really consuming, I think is the word, for college coaches. It's very difficult. You have to be on high alert all the time, and that's a really exhausting life. But what about the changes that occurred in the 15 years prior to that, Scott, when the University of Texas decided that paying their football coach at the time, Mack Brown, $3 million, which is more than anybody else was making, wasn't enough, and that he had to be paid $5 million. That massive increase set off an absolute firestorm of salary increases in college coaching. And as a result, when Tony Bennett was finishing his career for the last a good number of years, he was making over $4 million a year. And over his last 11 years, he made $38 million. So those changes allowed him to have the freedom to say, you know what, I'm done. There are changes that impact everything in this equation. And all we focus on are the changes recently that have granted a significant amount of power to the athletes, and not the changes that precipitated that it granted an inordinate amount of money to the coaches.
Do you think that's why Jay Wright walked away too? He had all that money and he just didn't need it anymore, any of the nonsense. Now, I understand what you're saying. It's not just because of NIL and paying players. This is a lot deeper than that. But, I mean, here's a guy that, what didn't he win? He won the NCAA tournament. What didn't he win? He won several ACC titles. He won more games than anyone ever at that school. Right. Honestly, what didn't he accomplish? And you're right. Like, I didn't like the way. Fair enough, it's his choice. But the way he handled it, I thought was weak. Right before the season starts, and then he went through the motions of signing a new deal, and then he went to the media days. What was he thinking? Like, don't tell me he made his mind up in the morning at breakfast and then made this decision by the afternoon. He had to have been drumming this up.
Well, the way he explained it was that he and his wife took a weekend vacation, and they talked about it a lot and came to this decision. I think Tony Bennett's a wonderful man. I've known him for 25 years and couldn't like him more. He's terrific. The trap you get into when you're in this circumstance where you're thinking about walking away is that you're going to impact somebody negatively one way or the other. If he had left in April, his coaching staff, his entire support staff would have basically been out of a job. And that's problematic for them. He leaves now, and the players who all signed up to play for Tony Bennett and everything that entailed, then they are out of a coach. So there's really no good time to do this. I can understand why people complained about it, and I understand why there is another side to it as well. But for me, the real thing comes down to is that college basketball is a terrific sport. The players do have an exorbitant amount of power now because of instant eligibility, what we use colloquially as the transfer portal. The portal itself is not the problem. The problem relative to the coaches and the stability of the sport is the immediate eligibility anytime you want to leave. That's the problem. And the solution to that is to make the athletes employees. But that creates a whole nother set of problems, and it's why the universities and colleges aren't really all that eager to do that.
So in the article, you talked about all these guys that stopped when they were in their 70s. That guy's nowhere near that. And you talked about how overwhelming the job is, how draining it is, and how stressful it is. He was a great teacher as a coach. There's nothing he can do to impress me with this decision. I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit here and agree with any of it. Like, I think he effed the whole program up nice and juicy. And what's going to happen in the aftermath of his bloodletting here? I mean, who's taking over?
Remember, though, Scott, if he had left in April, they would have had to go find a whole new roster because just about everybody that was wearing Virginia colors last year would have left, and then they would have had a difficult time assembling another roster. So that would have really put the problem in a bad spot. Are they going to
do that now, Mike?
I think there may be some players who haven't spent a redshirt year who could, if they wished, decide to just say, okay, I'm not playing this year and I'm going to go somewhere else. But they may decide that they know Ron Sanchez. They've been around him now for 5-6 months. Maybe they'll decide that and some for many more than that. But the new players have met Ron and know him and have worked with him, and maybe they like him enough to stick around. So I don't think that he gave the program a rough ride. I do think that the players who had committed for him and who returned for him, I think that's tough. But like I said, somebody was going to get a tough deal in this. I just look at it. The main thing for me, the main takeaway for me, is that there are lots of college coaches who still want to do this. The fact that Roy retired at 70 and Nick Saban retired, I think, 72, and Mike Krzyzewski retired at 75. It's not an unusual age to retire. That's pretty much what most people would have done with that amount of wealth and that age and experience. But there are lots of coaches who are in their 70s who are still going. I mean, Tom Izzo will turn 70 this year. Jim Larrañaga is in his 70s. Leonard Hamilton is 76. They're still hanging on. So why are they still doing it if it's so bad? I know that it's tough. I know that it's rougher than it's been, and it was always a difficult job because of the recruiting calendar. But I look at the fact that there's always somebody who wants to do it. College basketball, nearly 50 years ago, survived the departure of John Wooden. And what happened, Scott? It got way more popular. So I just think that college basketball will survive Tony Bennett as well.
Yeah, I don't think UCLA ever got better than John Wooden. I'm sorry. And here's another thing. They're already trying to push me out the door, Mike, let alone you. And I'm not even old. People keep telling me I'm not old. Well, I'm not old, but I'm 59. Now 59, I'm washed. My ass, okay? Can I make it to 67 so I can get that check in my mailbox? For Christ's sakes, honestly. And Ron Sanchez, who is that? Like, I don't even know who that is. Don't even start with me with Ron Sanchez, DeCourcy. Just go watch the Steelers beat the Giants Monday night. Stay out of my basketball affairs. I don't really want to talk hoops with you until it really starts.